Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The years after college were like living in a dream. Amanda and I built our life brick by brick, each milestone adding a layer to the picture-perfect existence we shared. I used to think that kind of happiness was unshakable. But even the strongest walls can hide cracks beneath the surface. Amanda was the kind of woman who could light up a room just by entering it. She had a natural charm that drew people in, effortlessly confident, endlessly compassionate. She poured her heart into everything she did, especially her work as an event planner. I admired that about her, even when it meant late nights and occasional weekends away. She would always return home, tired but happy, regaling me with stories of high-strung clients, creative breakthroughs, and minor disasters averted. I supported her as best as I could, managing the house and the kids when her job demanded more of her time. Our children, Owen and Lily, adored her. They were too young to notice her absence on certain evenings, but I did. I chalked it up to the demands of her career, telling myself it was a temporary phase. Our life was, by all appearances, perfect. We lived in a cozy two-story home on a tree-lined street, the kind of place where neighbors stopped by for block parties and kids played basketball in the cul-de-sac. I worked as a software engineer, a job that allowed me to spend plenty of time with Owen and Lily. My role in the family felt clear and fulfilling. Amanda was the dreamer, and I was the rock, grounding us when life got chaotic. Things began to shift subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. Amanda's energy changed. She'd always been meticulous about her work, but now there was an edge to her excitement when she spoke about upcoming projects. Her eyes would gleam with a brightness I hadn't seen before. I couldn't place it then, but something in her demeanor felt off. I brushed it aside. It was easier to believe she was just engrossed in her work, as passionate as ever. But small signs began piling up, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. One night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat in the living room flipping through channels, waiting for Amanda to return from a dinner meeting. When she walked through the door, her cheeks were flushed, her laughter uncharacteristically loud as she kicked off her heels. I teased her about enjoying a little too much wine, and she laughed it off, saying, "Just another long day with impossible clients." But when she kissed me goodnight, there was a fleeting moment where her gaze didn't quite meet mine. I didn't confront her. What could I say? Amanda was my wife, my partner. I trusted her. Still, the unease settled in the pit of my stomach like a stone. It wasn't until the message popped up on her phone weeks later that my world began to crack. It was an ordinary weekday evening. Amanda had gone out with her friends, leaving her phone on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a text from Guy. "Can't stop thinking about last weekend. When's the next work trip?" I stood frozen, staring at the glowing screen. My hands went clammy, and my breath hitched in my throat. My first instinct was denial. This had to be a misunderstanding. Amanda would never betray me. But the words stared back at me, undeniable in their implication. For a long moment, I didn't know what to do. Confrontation felt too explosive, too premature. I needed to be sure. I needed proof. In the days that followed, I began noticing everything. Amanda's sudden obsession with her appearance. Her late nights that no longer added up. Her phone, always clutched tightly in her hand or tucked away, out of reach. The little changes that I'd dismissed now loomed large in my mind, each one a thread in the web of doubt tightening around me. Despite my suspicions, I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I began gathering evidence. I combed through her texts when she left her phone unattended, sifted through receipts and emails, and even tracked her work trips to cross-reference her claims. The picture that emerged was devastating. Amanda was having an affair. And it wasn't new. Her messages with Guy revealed a relationship that spanned months, maybe even longer. They spoke in code, planned rendezvous during her so-called work trips, and exchanged explicit details that made my stomach churn. At night, lying beside her in bed, I felt like a stranger. The warmth and love that had once been the foundation of our marriage felt hollow, an echo of what I believed was real. I couldn't bear to touch her, couldn't bring myself to speak the truth aloud. I needed time to figure out what came next. Our anniversary loomed on the horizon, a milestone I had once looked forward to with excitement. Now it felt like a cruel joke. But I saw it as an opportunity. If Amanda was capable of rehearsing her lies and pretending everything was fine, then so was I. I decided I would give her one last chance to come clean. The evening of our anniversary, I prepared her favorite meal, set the table with candles, and greeted her with a glass of wine. She seemed surprised but delighted, slipping into the role of the doting wife with practiced ease. For a moment, I almost believed the illusion. But as we sat down to eat, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Amanda," I said, my voice steady but cold, "is there something you want to tell me?" Her smile faltered, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean," I said, sliding the folder of evidence across the table. "Take a look." Her hands trembled as she opened it, her eyes scanning the pages. When she looked up at me, her face was pale, her lips quivering. For the first time in our marriage, I saw fear in her eyes. "I can explain," she stammered. "Go ahead," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I'm listening." Amanda began to cry, her words tumbling out in fragments. She blamed me for being distant, for working too much, for not giving her the attention she needed. But I'd heard enough. Her excuses couldn't erase the betrayal, the months of lies, or the trust she'd shattered. "I want a divorce," I said, cutting her off. The words felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but I couldn't let her see the pain. "You've made your choices, Amanda. Now I'm making mine." Amanda's tears fell freely, her once carefully crafted facade crumbling before me. "Evan, please," she begged, reaching across the table. Her hand hovered over mine, trembling with desperation. "Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll end it with him, I swear." Her voice cracked, the rawness almost convincing. Almost. But the folder of evidence sat between us, a silent reminder of months, maybe years, of deceit. My love for her, the foundation of everything we had built, felt like a distant memory, something I had once cherished but could no longer recognize. "How long?" I asked, my voice cold and unfamiliar even to myself. Amanda hesitated, her eyes darting away. "Does it matter?" I slammed my fist against the table, the force making the wine glasses tremble. "Yes, Amanda, it matters. Tell me how long you've been lying to me, to our family." She recoiled, her composure breaking further. "It's been a year. Maybe a little longer." A year. The number echoed in my mind like a gunshot. A year of my life wasted on a lie. A year of her sneaking away, pretending, smiling as if everything was fine. The weight of it was suffocating. "Why?" I demanded, my voice quieter but sharper. "Why him? Why anyone?" Amanda pressed her hands to her face, her sobs muffled. "I don't know," she choked out. "It wasn't about you. It was never about you." "Don't give me that," I snapped. "You chose to betray me, Amanda. You chose this. You don't get to say it wasn't about me." I felt lost, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The kids, work, everything. I thought I had nothing left for myself. And then he made me feel seen. Alive." Her words stung, each one a dagger to my pride, my heart. I leaned back in my chair, trying to maintain the control I felt slipping away. "So, what now?" I asked bitterly. "You expect me to just forgive you? Forget everything? Pretend this never happened?" "No," she said quickly. I don't expect that. I know I've destroyed everything. But please, Evan, don't throw it all away. Don't throw us away. The irony of her plea wasn't lost on me. She had already thrown us away, piece by piece, in every text, every lie, every stolen moment with him. That night, I slept in the guest room. Amanda cried herself to sleep in our bedroom, or at least that's what I assumed. I didn't go in to check. I couldn't bear to see her, to hear her, to feel the familiar pull of wanting to comfort her even when she was the one who had inflicted the pain. In the silence of the guest room, I stared at the ceiling, the events of the evening replaying in a loop. Her confession. Her excuses. Her tears. They were all competing for space in my mind. But more than that, I couldn't stop thinking about my children. Owen and Lily. They were innocent in this mess, yet they were about to be caught in the fallout. The thought of them waking up to a broken home tore at me. For their sake, I needed to be strong, to figure out how to move forward. Divorce wasn't just about Amanda and me, it was about them. About giving them stability, love, and protection, even if it meant dismantling everything they thought they knew. The next morning, Amanda was in the kitchen when I came downstairs. She had clearly been crying all night, her eyes were swollen, and her usual polished appearance was disheveled. The sight of her like that would have broken my heart once, but now it barely registered. "Good morning," she said quietly, as if trying to avoid waking the tension that hung thick in the air. I ignored her, pouring myself a cup of coffee and heading for the backyard. The sun was shining, mocking the darkness inside me. I sat on the porch, sipping the coffee that tasted bitter no matter how much sugar I added. Minutes later, Amanda joined me, sitting cautiously at the opposite end of the bench. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence between us growing heavier with every passing second. "I'll move out," she said finally. "If that's what you want." Her voice startled me. I turned to look at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. "And where will you go?" I asked. "To him." Her face twisted in pain, and she shook her head. "No. It's over with him. I told him last night. He didn't take it well." "Good," I said flatly. "He deserves worse." Amanda sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I'll stay with my sister for a while. Give you space. Give the kids space." At the mention of the kids, my chest tightened. "What do we tell them, Amanda?" "They'll notice when you're not here." "I don't know," she admitted, her voice cracking. "What do we tell them?" It was the first time I saw her stripped of her defenses, truly vulnerable. But it didn't move me. It only deepened my resolve. "We tell them the truth," I said. "That their mother made a mistake, and now we're figuring out how to fix it." Her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Evan, please. Let me stay. For them. We can tell them we're working through things. They don't need to know everything." I shook my head. "They deserve honesty, Amanda. They deserve better than this." The next few days were a blur of logistical planning and strained conversations. Amanda packed her things while the kids were at school, leaving behind the trappings of our life together. I kept my interactions with her brief, clinical. Every word she spoke felt like another wound, another reminder of what we had lost. When the day came for her to leave, the kids were confused. "Where's Mom going?" Owen asked, his voice small and uncertain. "She's staying with Aunt Sarah for a while," I said, kneeling to meet his eyes. "Mom and I need to take some time to work on a few things." "Are you mad at each other?" Lily asked, her lip trembling. I hesitated, searching for the right words. "It's complicated," I said finally. "But no matter what happens, we both love you. That will never change." They clung to me, their small arms wrapping around my neck. I held them tightly, silently cursing the woman who had put them in this position. Amanda hugged them too, whispering promises I wasn't sure she could keep. As she walked out the door, suitcase in hand, she turned to look at me one last time. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. I didn't respond. I just closed the door behind her, sealing off the past and bracing myself for whatever came next. The silence in the house was deafening after Amanda left. The space she had occupied felt larger, emptier, as if her absence carried a physical weight. The kids were quieter than usual, their playful chatter replaced by hesitant whispers. They tiptoed around me, their questions hanging unspoken in the air. I didn't blame them. I barely knew what to say myself. I focused on routines. Morning breakfast, school drop-offs, evening dinners, it all became a carefully choreographed dance to maintain normalcy. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't escape the cracks in our carefully constructed life. Owen was the first to confront me. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, he lingered in the kitchen, fiddling with the straps of his backpack. I was cleaning up after dinner when he finally spoke. "Dad," he said, his voice hesitant. "Yeah, buddy." I turned, drying my hands on a dish towel. "Is Mom coming back?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. I knelt to his level, looking into his wide, uncertain eyes. "Owen," I began, choosing my words carefully, "Mom and I are trying to figure some things out right now. It's going to take some time." He nodded slowly, but his expression remained troubled. Did she do something wrong? My heart ached at his perceptiveness. He was only 9, but he had a way of seeing through the facade adults tried to maintain. "It's not that simple," I said, my voice tight. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and it's hard to fix them." He stared at the floor, his small shoulders sagging. "Are you mad at her?" I hesitated. "A little," I admitted. "But I still want what's best for her, and for you and Lily. That's what matters most." Owen nodded again, but I could see the gears turning in his head. I knew this wouldn't be the last time we had this conversation. Amanda called every evening, her voice soft and apologetic. At first, I let the kids answer, allowing them to maintain their connection with her. They laughed at her jokes and filled her in on their day, oblivious to the strain in her tone. But when she asked to speak to me, I kept it short. "Evan," she said during one call, "I know you're still angry. I don't blame you. But I want to come back. For the kids." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "Where do I fit into that plan?" She paused, caught off guard. "I want to fix things with you too. I want us to be a family again." "Funny," I said coldly. "You should have thought of that before." Her breath hitched, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered the text messages, the lies, the months of deceit. Whatever sympathy I might have felt evaporated. "You made your choices, Amanda," I continued. "Now you have to live with them." News of Amanda's departure spread quickly. Neighbors offered awkward condolences or nosy questions disguised as concern. Some brought casseroles or cookies, as if baked goods could patch up a broken marriage. I accepted their offerings with a polite smile but kept my distance. The last thing I needed was pity. The worst was running into Carla, a friend of Amanda's who lived a few houses down. She cornered me at the mailbox one morning, her face a mix of curiosity and thinly veiled judgment. "Evan," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret, "I heard about Amanda. I'm so sorry." "Thanks," I said curtly, hoping she'd take the hint and move on. Instead, she leaned in. "If you ever need to talk, you know, about anything." Her implication was clear, and it turned my stomach. "I'm fine, Carla," I said firmly. "But thanks." She looked disappointed, but she finally retreated. It was a reminder that not everyone's concern was genuine. One evening, after the kids were asleep, I found myself staring at the folder of evidence I had shown Amanda. It still sat on the dining table, untouched since the night of our confrontation. I opened it, flipping through the messages, the receipts, the damning proof of her betrayal. It felt surreal, as if I were reading someone else's story. The woman described in these pages wasn't the Amanda I had married. She was someone else entirely, a stranger who had lived a parallel life alongside ours. One receipt caught my eye. A dinner at a restaurant in the next town over, dated a month ago. It was local enough that she could have driven there during one of her late work nights. The thought of her sitting across from him, laughing, sharing a meal, made my blood boil. I had never wanted revenge before. But now, the idea lingered, unshakable. The next day, I began making calls. First, to a lawyer. I needed to protect myself and the kids, to ensure that Amanda's actions wouldn't jeopardize their future. The consultation was sobering but empowering. The lawyer assured me that I had a strong case for custody, given Amanda's infidelity and its impact on the family. Then, I contacted a private investigator. If Amanda wanted to rebuild trust, she would need to come clean about everything. I needed to know if there were other lies, other secrets waiting to surface. The investigator promised a discreet inquiry, but even taking that step felt like an act of war. One evening, while playing board games with Owen and Lily, I caught myself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in weeks. It was a brief moment of normalcy, a reminder that life could go on, even in the face of upheaval. Lily grinned up at me, her eyes sparkling. "Daddy, you're funny," she said, her voice full of pure, unfiltered joy. In that moment, I realized why I had to keep fighting, not for revenge or closure, but for them. They deserved stability, love, and a father who would never let them down. As I tucked them into bed that night, I made a silent promise. No matter what happened with Amanda, I would give them the life they deserved. And I wouldn't let her, or anyone else, take that away from them. Weeks turned into months. The sting of Amanda's betrayal didn't fade entirely, but it dulled, softened by time and the routines I built with Owen and Lily. They adjusted surprisingly well, their resilience a quiet comfort in my darkest moments. Amanda called regularly, came by for visits, and did her best to maintain her place in their lives. But between us, the distance remained, vast and unbridgeable. One evening, as the kids played in the backyard, I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Life was stabilizing, but the cracks were still there, faint but persistent reminders of the life I had lost. I had begun to accept that this was my new reality. Until Amanda called, shattering the fragile peace. "Evan," she began, her voice trembling, "I need to see you. It's important." I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Amanda, I don't think there's anything left to say." "Please," she insisted. "This isn't about us. It's about him." We met at a coffee shop the next morning. Amanda looked different, nervous, yes, but there was something else in her eyes. Fear. She sat across from me, clutching her cup of tea like it was a lifeline. "What's this about?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "It's complicated," she began, her voice barely audible. "After we separated, I tried to move on. I thought cutting ties with him would help. But," she hesitated, looking down at her cup. "But what?" I pressed, my patience thinning. She took a deep breath, then met my gaze. "He won't leave me alone." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Amanda's hands shook as she reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of printed emails and text messages. She slid them across the table. "He's been sending these for weeks. At first, I ignored them. But now, he's threatening me." I flipped through the messages, my chest tightening with every line. Her affair partner, Elliot, as I now learned, hadn't taken their breakup well. His texts were erratic, veering between desperate pleas and sinister threats. He mentioned following her, knowing where she worked, even alluding to the kids. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice rising. Amanda flinched, her eyes glistening with tears. I didn't know who else to turn to. "Evan, I'm scared. For me, for the kids." I didn't think he'd. "Does he know where we live?" I interrupted. She nodded, barely. "I think so." I left the coffee shop with a fire burning in my chest. This wasn't just about Amanda anymore, this was about my family, my kids. I wouldn't let some unhinged maniac threaten them. With the investigator I'd hired months ago, I tracked Elliot down. He lived 2 towns over, in a modest apartment complex. I spent a night outside his building, watching, waiting. It didn't take long to confirm he was still obsessed with Amanda. Through the investigator's efforts, I learned he had recently lost his job, his marriage, and was facing financial ruin. His fixation on Amanda was likely all he had left. The next day, I knocked on his door. Elliot opened it, his face pale and thin. He looked startled to see me but quickly recovered, a sneer twisting his lips. "What do you want?" I stepped closer, forcing him to back up into the apartment. "We need to talk." His smirk faltered. "I don't know what she told you, but—" "You need to leave her alone," I said, cutting him off. "Whatever this is, whatever fantasy you've built up in your head, it ends now." Elliot's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of fear behind them. "Or what?" "Or I make your life a living hell," I said evenly. "And believe me, Elliot, I have the means to do it." He scoffed, but his voice wavered. "You think you scare me? You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," I said, taking another step forward. "I know you're spiraling. I know you've lost everything. And I know you think Amanda is the answer to your problems. But let me make this clear, if you come near her, near my kids, near my family again, I'll ruin you." The air between us crackled with tension. Finally, Elliot broke eye contact, his bravado crumbling. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll back off." "You'd better," I said, turning to leave. "Because if I hear your name again, you won't see me coming." Days passed without incident. Amanda seemed relieved, but I remained on edge. Something about Elliot's surrender felt too easy. Then, one night, as I was tucking Lily into bed, the doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was a police officer. "Mr. Evan Harper?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my pulse quickening. "We need you to come with us." My heart plummeted. "Why? What's this about?" The officer hesitated. "It's about Amanda." At the station, I was ushered into a sterile room where Amanda sat, her face pale and tear-streaked. Beside her was a lawyer, who looked grim. "What's going on?" I demanded. The lawyer sighed. "Amanda has been arrested for embezzlement." "What?" I stared at her, my mind racing. "Amanda, what is he talking about?" She buried her face in her hands. "It was Elliot," she sobbed. "He blackmailed me. He said he'd tell you about everything unless I helped him funnel money from my company." The room spun. "You're saying you stole money? For him?" "I didn't know what else to do," she cried. I was desperate. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All the months of betrayal, the lies, the upheaval, it had all led to this. Amanda was released on bail the next day, but the damage was done. She begged for my forgiveness, pleaded for me to help her. But as I watched her crumble, I realized I had nothing left to give. The kids and I packed our things and moved in with my sister temporarily. The house, once a symbol of stability, now felt like a prison of memories. Amanda's legal battles consumed her, and Elliot disappeared without a trace. My only solace was the knowledge that I had protected my kids from further harm. They were my priority now, my reason to move forward. Life had taken everything I thought I knew and twisted it into something unrecognizable. But as I stood on the porch of my sister's house, watching Owen and Lily chase fireflies in the fading light, I felt a flicker of hope. We had survived the storm. And no matter what came next, we would survive that too.